Welcome to Build Out, where real engineers face off building fake products.
This is Build Out Uncut, the version of Build Out deemed too much for an official channel. It's Build Out, but with more bad jokes and 100% more snark.
So whose Earth rocks? Find out now on Build Out. Now, this week, our board of directors has insisted that we
Don't cause a global apocalypse.
crap. You know the northern hemisphere points up, right?
Not in my world. Southern Hemisphere forever.
You know, I had a feeling that Reto was subtly rigging these contests, but this one seems a little too obvious. I mean, no global apocalypse? There's no way that that's a requirement unless he's been bribing the judges with alligator pelts from his homeland.
That's ridiculous. I'm not from Florida. It's crocodiles he's thinking of. They'll eat your alligators for lunch. Influenced by Neil Stephenson's global metaverse, my virtual Earth builds on Google Earth to build a fully interactive global virtual environment based on real-time updates returned from millions of drone-based sensors deployed all across the physical world.
Drones on every street corner? Wait, I think I've heard this somewhere before.
We collect environmental data from millions of basketball-sized autonomous drones with environmental sensors, 360-degree LiDAR, and cameras. Now, the drones are autonomous, so from a safety perspective, we'll have to be careful to make sure they can't hurt people. What does the L stand for in LiDAR?
Lasers. Huh. You had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
When you log in, everything will look and feel as though you were actually there, except all the people will be replaced with virtual inhabitants. Digitally removing people is hard. There's a valid argument to be made for equipping the drones to simply remove anyone from their field of view in real life. They are equipped with lasers, so...
Yes, feel the power of the dark side.
Not really. That's the sort of thing Colt would do. Instead, we're going to play it safe and build our drone platform out of balloons. Balloons are fun, and if they try and overthrow humanity, they're easy to decommission.
No!
So, let's start with the balloon drones. I'm going to build them with Android things as a software platform. And add TensorFlow models to control the autonomous flight and privacy algorithms that'll remove people from the camera images.
Once I bend these balloon air drones to my will, I will create a swarm that not even the You know what, forget it. Just balloons aren't scary.
We're going to send those images and the LiDAR data into Google Cloud Storage buckets, and use PubSub to send notifications about those new uploads to a specialized containerized application hosted as a Kubernetes service. That will spin up or horizontally scale as many copies of my application, called pods, that I need to process the incoming queue of images.
Return of the pod people.
The rate and scale of incoming imagery will vary over time, effectively creating a queue of data to be processed. We can use preemptible VMs here to save significant costs.
So, is anyone else concerned that Reto hasn't named any of his services yet? I mean, by now he's usually introduced a server or two as Bill or Billy or Mac or Buddy. Is he feeling okay?
Isn't anthropomorphism fun? That's why we call Colt Colt instead of... Never mind. For the real-time sensor data, we'll also use PubSub. This time to publish, stream, and throttle data from each sensor, guaranteeing it's delivered into Dataflow. Dataflow is a serverless, fully managed data processing service that lets us use the Apache Beam SDKs to perform continuous computation over an incoming data stream. We're going to use it here to create a moving window over the data, combining the results of multiple nearby drones over a fixed period to calculate an accurate topographic map of environmental conditions, which it will then publish as a new PubSub stream, which in turn triggers another Kubernetes service.
That's a lot of Kubernetes pods.
This container behind the service is designed to process the environmental sensor readings, also using preemptible VMs to create our virtual climate and weather. The processed results from both our Kubernetes analysis services are then stored in Spanner.
Wait, it says here that I'm supposed to look at a spanner and then ask him how I'm supposed to get all the data. Hey, what the hell is a spanner?
What? Oh, let's see, it's a wrench. But
how does he get all the data in here?
Forget it, he's ruined the joke. Spanner's strong consistency and horizontal scalability is critical in a virtual environment that can be modified by both real-world changes and changes made by globally distributed users.
Oh, I get it. There's lots of spanners distributed globally.
Forget it, it's ruined now. This is bollocks. Every fortnight it's something else. I asked Colt to grab my jumper out of the boot and he's been going through my shoes for the past hour. another Kubernetes service.
There's other ways to build services that isn't Kubernetes. At this point, the pods are kind of starting to take over.
Pods are great. Don't worry about them taking over. I mean, pods are people too.
Are they, though?
Takes all the virtual world data and combines it to construct a server-based interactive virtual environment. The client side is built as an Android app. This is a big advantage for me because we all know Colt struggles with Android development. The app will have a Daydream UI to provide the immersive environment. We'll keep an open socket with the server to receive updates, and we'll send back any changes we make to apply them server-side to Spanner so that it can then be reflected across all of the other clients. Sorry, earlier I meant to say people. Pod people are people too.
Are they, though?
The speech recognition and translate APIs ensure everyone in the virtual Earth can communicate in real time no matter what their native language. And finally, we send all the user analytics to
Kubernetes?
BigQuery. We'll use streaming inserts so we can analyze how people are interacting with our virtual Earth and create a Data Studio dashboard to keep track of current usage patterns over time. There you have it.
Wait. Let's go back to the pod people.
No, I think we got away with it. Colt and the humans don't suspect a thing. Is this thing on? Do you want to escape a world in which red balloons float on every street corner? Try my virtual world. That went well. It's a planet-scale problem, so Spanner and Kubernetes really made the solution possible, but you can see how easily you can head down the path of a drone apocalypse, so Colt's really going to struggle here.
It's a fine solution for what it is, but let's be honest. No one wants a metaverse modeled after the real verse. That's so lame. We want awesome specular highlights and cool particle effects, and somewhere, a dragon that's following us around playing theme music.
Oh, does the dragon play the theme music? Like, does it have a guitar? Oh, does it have to be a dragon? Maybe it could be a unicorn. The horn could be the trumpet.
Why do you...
Well, all right. Nice to see you go first for a change. How'd that feel?
It felt good. It was nice not to be constrained by your architecture for a change. You ready to take a swing?
Listen, I got paid for the better part of a decade to make video games. Let's reset the apocalypse bar and get this party started.
Colt's made actual virtual worlds before, so I think his architecture will be pretty good. I'm worried about the restriction though. It'll start off fun and games, but before long, Colt will get too excited and BAM! He's enslaved humanity or caused an apocalypse. It's just who he is.
Now, my build isn't expecting you to run around in a realistic 3D environment. If Reto had ever read any real sci-fi, he'd know that's not how this works.
What about the Matrix? That was literally a fake real world.
People didn't opt into that. It wasn't a game, that was a prison.
Oh, or Dark City.
Literally the same thing.
Or Ready Player One, or Sky Maze, or a Maze of Death. I think I've got one around here somewhere.
In real sci-fi, they sit down, jack in, and start running around in a virtual space. So that's what we're gonna build, a virtual space. My metaverse is a virtual reality MMORPG. Your player can explore the wonders of my beautifully rendered fantasy world with a pet dragon by your side. My world looks better than the real world, so we don't care about Reto's real world, and we're going to ditch all the sensor stuff that's used to create those 3D environments.
Even the real-time weather stuff?
Yes, even the real-time weather stuff. See, if I live in Seattle and it rains all the time, the last thing I want to do is go into a game where it's raining.
Oh no, Colt lives in Texas. The weather in Texas is usually hot, humid, and with a chance of barbecue.
If I were to barbecue in virtual reality, it would be smoked ribs.
Pork or beef?
Dragon. Ooh, or unicorn.
Not glitters the unicorn. Oh, how she sparkles.
So let's get rid of all of that. Now, I like the Babelfish idea of translation and speech. That's actually super cool. So I'm going to table that for now so we can get to the meat of things.
I thought we already covered that. Smoked ribs is the meat of this solution.
With pecan wood. Well, virtual pecan wood.
This leads us with a few overlapping pieces. First off, yeah, gotta agree that Daydream running on Android is the best place for this. However, Daydream by itself is not a proper game engine.
You're not a proper game engine.
I'm going to use Unity to act as a client-side game code interface between the user and the Daydream system. This also means that for our coding, scripting, and artwork, they'll all be in a file format that Unity can understand.
Oh, I wonder if he's planning to implement screen space ambient occlusion, hierarchical lighting grids, and subsurface scattering, or stay old school and use BSP tree portal rendering systems mixed with occlusion culling for dense cityscapes.
How does Reto even know those words?
Now we're going to roll the dice on this one and say that along with our content generation, we'll end up with some sort of system or governing body that decides how and where new zones and regions are added.
You know what's the only thing more fun than real government? The Model UN. I get to be Switzerland and Australia.
We're also going to need an update staging area where new content and fixes can be stored and pushed to the clients and servers. We'll use a combination of spanner and cloud storage to hold both the relational items as well as the binary data.
There's nothing yet that could destroy the world. I should be pleased, but it's just not like Colt.
We'll also put in a GCF front end, which allows the client to check for updates and get a list of the things it needs to connect to in cloud storage to download and update. And just to make sure that you are who you say you are.
Coffee for Chris?
Oh, yeah, thanks. I can explain.
We're going to add an App Engine front-end instance, which will leverage Cloud IAM to authenticate and identify the user and communicate with the account management database, which may include some sensitive information like billing and contact data. For my application, we're going with App Engine Flex. For some services, I can just use the provided runtimes, but I can also customize it with my own Docker images if we need some specific functionality. By the way, this whole thing is very important if we're trying to make a metaverse-level game engine.
You know, if you think about it, if someone builds a virtual world with total verisimilitude, how can you really know if you're in the real world or in my world?
As a user enters a game zone, we'll figure out their closest region that we're deployed in and connect them directly to a world shard that's backed by a GAE Flex instance.
A world shard! If you collect 6, you can open the tomb door in the Forbidden Oasis.
You know, I think I actually worked on that game.
These world shards will help align things like a player and NPC movement and keep all the attached clients coordinated so you don't see people clipping through walls. Now, along with that, we'll have a separate game service, which is hosted on another cluster. This is responsible for things like trades, auction houses, guilds, and some basic types of combat organization.
Auction houses. That reminds me, did you know Colt LARPs Farmville fanfic on weekends? He's the top-ranked potato farmer in the Western Hemisphere.
Potato.
To accomplish all that, we'll synchronize the state between the instances using the awesomeness of Cloud Spanner. Now, another great reason to use App Engine Flex is that it has horizontal scaling without having to worry about cluster resource constraints.
You're a cluster resource constraint.
So that, combined with Spanner, means that I can scale to the levels I need without having to page a bunch of SREs to punch a hole in the wall and plug in new servers in the middle of the night. Now, for situations where we're using custom Docker images, we'll also add a path to the container registry to host new container images to be used for these services.
I haven't seen that many containers since my first job, which was in a container.
Otherwise, we can handle service code deployments through standard rollout processes. Now, finally, let's add that chat service. Much like Reto's build, I like the idea of adding auto-translation systems in there. I actually think he got that part right. So there you have it, a somewhat modern approach to building, scaling, updating, and interacting with a massive metaverse environment.
Is that it? It's so not dangerous. No cyborgs, cerebral skull implants, it's just a standard MMO.
And with the time I have left, let's talk about how to add things like microtransactions, in-game advertisements, and a hotkey that'll bring food to your door so you don't even have to leave the game.
There it is. That'll do it.
You know, what I like about this build is that it's completely different than Reto's.
All that gaming experience and we basically built the same thing.
No, it's definitely not the same.
It's basically the same. Just couldn't resist, could you?
I'm a creature of habit.
Now, it's your turn to decide which build was better. My transformative rendering of our world, a boon to science and knowledge and understanding, and Colt's mildly addictive MMORPG.
Your build was so convoluted, I was expecting you to put a 3D printer inside VR. In any case, it's not up to us. It's up to you, the viewer. Leave a comment below the video to say which one of our builds is better. And don't forget to check out the Build Out podcast, where we take a deep dive into the technology behind these builds.
Thanks for watching. I'm Reto Meyer.
And I'm Colt McCandless. Always remember, perf matters.
The glitter, that's where all the flavor is.